To get started, thank you for coming. I want to welcome everybody to this fundraising event. As I'm going to mention in my remarks a little bit, this event for me is sort of essential to my being here at Sacramento State. And I'm going to speak to that in my remarks. But welcome, everyone. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. My name is Christopher Talbot. I am an assistant professor here at Sacramento State in the Department of Political Science. And I have just finished my second year here at the university. So, sometimes it goes by fast. Sometimes it seems like I've been here a lot longer too, though. But in order to sort of introduce the event and the center, I'd like to tell a bit of my own story. As a first-generation college student and a first-generation in my family in the professoriate, it really wasn't until my junior year of college that I even knew what a PhD program was, let alone a doctorate and a faculty position. And I learned that through the McNair program at my undergraduate university at the University of Colorado. There's a McNair program here on campus, but the McNair program here and on most campuses is very, very, very small. But ever since I started that journey, I've always been searching for community. And community has been something that has been essential to my understanding of not only who I am as an academic, but what I want to produce with my work and in the classroom. And as I was searching for graduate schools upon leaving the University of Colorado, the number one thing I was looking for was that same sense of community. And I had found it in two schools. One was the University of Michigan, and one was the University of Washington in Seattle. Both had interdisciplinary cross-campus programs that brought students of color, first-generation students together and absolutely encouraged a sense of community. And I felt like this was vital to me being successful in graduate school, considering I had really just learned what graduate school was 2 years earlier. I didn't get into the University of Michigan, and so I ended up at the University of Washington. And through their program, the Graduate Opportunities Program, I was able to really seek out mentorship in ways beyond my department that allowed me to not only successfully complete, but actually have a good time and flourish in graduate school. And that again, sort of became essential to what I'm looking for in my profession and as an academic. Once I graduated, I ended up getting a job at a liberal arts state school in Washington State, and I was joint in political science and ethnic studies. This small school, though, was really in the first stages of trying to understand what it meant to diversify and to encourage sort of building bridges and building communities, especially amongst multicultural faculty and students. And it was really hard. And so for 3 years there, I put my head down and I tried to really figure out how to continue to push forward without that sense of community that I had really encouraging me in ways that nothing else could. And so when I came to Sac State, Professor Odin was one of the first people that introduced me to the campus community, and the Center for Race, Immigration, and Social Justice was the first thing I rolled off his tongue. And as soon as I heard that, I knew that this was a place that I would be able to flourish at once again, that I would be able to find that sense of community, to have this sort of cross-campus, multicultural community program. And so for me, so far in my short 2 years here at Sacramento State, this center has been essential to my recruitment to the university. It has been essential to my development as a professor, having the opportunity to present at events, to be up here and talk to you all, to talk with other professors and students about research and about teaching and about classes. And it's also been sort of essential for my mental health and well-being as well. And really that's what it boils down to. That's why it's really, really important for us to be here tonight to discuss this center and what it means to the university. And I've also seen, and I hope this is the case, we're going to hear from a wonderful student panel in a little while, but I've already seen in my 2 years here that the center has also worked in similar ways for students here, as I found as an undergraduate student and a graduate student in the merit program at the University of Washington, right? Working towards mentorship, encouraging co-authorship and scholarship, and really offering a sense of community. And so, while this type of institution, this type of center is always necessary, I find that the current times when sort of political and social institutions are working hard to re-entrench racism and discrimination, it is even more vital that our institution works against these powers to build community and institutionalize a center that works together and builds bridges. It really offers a home for faculty, students, and all in our community to celebrate each other and what we can really do when we put our heads together and work together and support each other. And so I encourage you to keep this in mind as we discuss the center for the rest of the evening. I encourage you to talk to one another and share your experiences, especially those that have interacted with the center or have some affiliation with the center. And we're going to have a great program. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a short break and we're going to get to finish eating. And please take this time to converse with each other and get to know your table mates. And then I'll come back up here in a little while and we will introduce our student panel, the first panel of the evening, where we're really going to start to hear some of the experiences that the center has brought to the campus. Thank you very much. We'd like to bring your attention back to the front of the room. And I'm going to introduce two of the founders of the Center for Race, Immigration, and Social Justice, Dr. Robert Odin and Dr. Manuel Barajas. Dr. Robert Stanley Odin is a professor in the Department of Political Science at California State University, Sacramento. Stan graduated from UC Davis in 1969 with a degree in political science. He also has a master's degree in community environmental management from U.S. International University. Dr. Odin received his PhD in sociology at UC Santa Cruz in 2000. Dr. Odin, a former Black Panther Party member in 1968, has been active in progressive community politics in the San Diego, Berkeley, Oakland, and Sacramento communities, working for over 45 years, including work as an assistant to the city manager with the city of Berkeley. He has written several essays which were published, including a chapter in Responses and Reflections on Hurricane Katrina. He has also published 2 edited volumes, Rivers of Struggle and Resistance, A Social Political History of the Underrepresented in the U.S., and California Politics, Shifting Majorities, Emerging Minorities. His most recent book is a monograph, From Blacks to Brown and Beyond, The Struggle for Progressive Politics in Oakland, California, 1996 to 2011, with Conyella Publishers. He has a sequel to his Oakland book coming out in the spring 2018. Stan has been president of the UC Davis African and African American Alumni Association for over 3 years and was the first vice president before being elected as president. Let's give Dr. Odin a big hand for his introduction. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Manuel Barajas. Dr. Barajas is a professor of sociology at California State University, Sacramento. He was born in Michoacan, Mexico, and raised in Stockton, California. From the age of 4 to early 20s, he worked in farm labor in the San Joaquin Valley during every summer and school break. Today, he teaches and writes about the subjects that shaped his life and specializes in immigration studies, Chicano communities, and race, gender, and class inequality. He is the author of The Chirapu Community Across Borders, Labor Migration, Community, and Family, with Notre Dame University Press, that received a Distinguished Book Award honorable mention from the Latino section of the American Sociological Association. Manuel is also active in community service in scholarly, university, and civic communities, and he enjoys collaborating with students in the community and believes in producing knowledge and advocacy that makes a difference in improving the lives of all marginalized communities. Let's give our 2 founders a warm welcome.
Buenas tardes, good evening.
Buenas tardes.
Gracias, thank you for supporting the CRISJ mission of trying to build bridges that empower our comunidades, our communities that typically get erased on TV, but more important, academically. That's why CRISJ is so important. We're hoping to insert these voices, these histories, these perspectives that get very little attention in all disciplines. In all disciplines, we're erased, homogenized, monolithic, understandings of who we are. Our kids start here at Sac State. I teach race and ethnic relations, Chicanas communities. I have 100 students, 120, and I ask, how many of you have had a course about your history, your literature, who you are? Out of 100, 120, maybe once in a while, one. This semester I had 100 students, one. That's unacceptable, that's CRISJ. We want to create space to produce knowledge, critical knowledge, that is denied to us. K-12, media, race, genocidic, colonial projects continue. Just to be, honest, truthful. And so that's the motivation. But before I go on, I want to, first of all, acknowledge that it is not Stan and me, that our strength is our loving relationships to our communities, our families, our students. We get squashed all the time. We get, vilified. We get distorted of who we are, And these loving relationships they give us strength. They humanize us. That's our strength. When you become disconnected, we become tumbleweeds, more easily controlled and disposed of. So building communities is important, it's essential. We need that here on campus to achieve the missions of the university. Make this campus work for everybody. And not see the trends that we see to this day. The attrition of indigenous people, brown people, known as Latinx, Chicanx. We're diverse indigenous peoples. We are as mixed as other racialized ethnicities. And no one knows about who we are because we're denied that history. Those stories that come from our grandparents, our grandmothers, our parents. So we are essential. We just being here, but we need the universities to support us to make a bigger impact. A ver qué más. Okay, we are not by ourselves. We are embedded in loving relationships with students, with colleagues, and I want to recognize our colegas for CRISJ associates. And without them, we wouldn't even be here. So I want those of you CRISJ associates who have been involved in this fundraising event, if you can please stand up and so that we can recognize you and love you. Párense, levántense. Las queremos un chingo. A very special group that stood up. I want to recognize two special graduates that just graduated this past week. Beatriz Figueroa Chavez, she got her BA. Yeah. Salinas got her MA. Yeah. And these women are chingonas, awesome, powerful, they're our future. So gracias, and I don't want to take too much time. I wanted to give those recognitions, and maybe I can read a little paragraph because I took a long time to write this little essay that I'm not going to read. But, okay, in this awful context of xenophobic nationalism coming out from the White House, in this political context of exclusion and division, CRISJ seeks to build bridges, not walls. Celebrate diversity and not squash it. Give voice to those who need representation, not only those with immense privileges. Only through broad public participation, coalition building that affirms people's humanity, dignity, diversity, can we successfully defeat this xenophobic nationalism that we're seeing in the White House. This populist politics of hate should remind us of Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail, where he reflected, quote, "An unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal law and natural law. Any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades human personality is unjust. All segregation statutes are unjust because segregation distorts the soul and damages personality." End of quote. Along this logic, the politics of walls, like the laws of racial segregation, are immoral because they divide people and keep them unequal, and they dehumanize a largely indigenous minority population as aliens unfit for this nation. CRISJ, thus, is committed to building bridges for social justice through research, mentorship, and community engagement, and we're already doing it. So gracias, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Before I begin my little speech, I want to bring someone up here who, if it wasn't for her, this thing probably wouldn't be happening the way it's happening. Because this individual really kept us on task. And I'm speaking of Gina Salinas. Could you come up here, please? I mean, you know, we're all PhDs, you know, we know what the hell we're doing, right? No, she knows what she's doing. She knows how to keep us going. She's a very savvy, intellectual person, and I just want to celebrate your birthday, which is tomorrow, and great work. So I'm going to give you a nice little present. Every once in a while, I order Chinese food. Me and my wife order Chinese food, and my wife Gina over here, who keeps me going. So we always open up the cookie to see what's in the sand. And so just recently, I got a cookie that said, "All great things have small beginnings. All great things have small beginnings." And this is how I think of what we're doing. It was on October 27, 2015. I was on a panel with other distinguished faculty members. It was a panel called Engaging Racism. And at this panel, I let out my frustration about the lack of hires in my department, which at that time was called the government department. And I let the audience know my feelings about it. And I also said that I believe that because we had an opportunity to hire a person of color in our department, and we did not that the person who got hired wasn't qualified, but I just felt that our department was practicing institutional racism. Now, of course, when you say something like that, with the dean sitting on the front row and all the faculty members sitting on the front row, that's going to cause some controversy, and it caused some controversy. But I didn't care because it was the truth. You call it as you see. And after that, we had meetings with the president because they didn't want to have a video that was filmed there. You had to have some kind of wording about it, and that was the first time any kind of wording I put on a video because of what I had said and what other people had said. But from that controversy, it led me to propose to the dean to fulfill his goal in trying to increase diversity at a college, and I proposed to him that we should have a Center on Race and Social Justice. And the dean told me, well, also Dr. Barajas is also running a center on immigration and labor. And I said, well, that's great, because I know Manuel, we work together, and so we put our ideas together. We got together with other faculty members, and from that time on, we began to build CRISJ. So we continue our efforts to make that happen, and that came from a small beginning, like in that Chinese cookie. And here we are today. So I think our small beginning has begun to bear fruit. And over the past 2 years, we have had a number of panels and forums. If you go outside, you see some of the posters that we have of our panels. And the one I enjoyed greatly was the one we had recently called a Community Empowerment Fair. And we had 11 community organizations come up here to the University Union and they tabled, and some of those great people are here today. Kevin Carter from Poor People's Campaign, that Glass from Fuel here, and other folks. And that was something very important to me, to bring the community into the campus, because that's what we should be about. That's what's going to be different about CRISJ. And so over 70 students and faculty members were able to meet community members, talk to Kevin and talk to other folks about what was going on in the community. And that's what we were about. But to be great, we need help. We need help to continue great events like this one tonight. We need help to create local, regional, and national conferences around our themes. We need help to send students to conferences around the country to learn and speak about these issues. We need help to build a community engagement center that we want to set up sometime in the community that connects CSU, Sacramento State with the community. But we need funds and we need your contributions to help us be great. So that's what this event is about tonight. It's about fundraising. This is our first start in doing this. So hopefully you can spread the word out to other folks, folks who want to engage in the critical issues of the day that we're talking about and what we're talking about tonight. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my brother, who's going to introduce the keynote speaker. I called my brother Doug, who's an attorney in San Diego. I said, hey man, we had Dr. Weber doing a speaking here at our event, and I can't think of anybody else but you to introduce her. And my brother didn't hesitate. He says, okay, no problem. He had to clear his schedule. As all attorneys, he has court responsibilities, but he was able to do that. So my brother Doug is here. Now, Doug was never my little brother, as you can see. In fact, we call him Little Doug, but that's another story. Because we had another great friend in our neighborhood named Douglas as well. And we have our older brother, Clyde, Dr. Clyde Oden, who is a little shorter than us. But Doug has had a great life, and he has a great law firm. But as I stated in the beginning, all great things have small beginnings. And when Doug started off in law, he started off in small offices. In fact, one of his law offices was in a 2-bedroom house just right up the street from the house where we grew up at in San Diego. But Doug's practice, being in the Logan Heights community, Southeast San Diego community of San Diego, his clients were black and brown and poor white clients because that's where his heart was. But he eventually was able to move to a downtown office with suite offices with 6 attorneys at one time, or maybe more. And at that time, he had the largest black law firm in San Diego, Oden Green. From small beginnings, he became great. And he is still in downtown serving black and brown and white and any client that would walk into his office around civil and criminal cases. So we were very fortunate to have Doug here tonight. Doug also is a great singer. He doesn't know that, but he's a great singer. He's in a church choir at Bethel Andy Church. He's also, I hate to admit it, a great golfer. He beats my ass all the time. And he's a great husband and a great father. And I really greatly appreciate you coming up here to introduce Shirley. Doug Oden.
Okay, don't believe anything he says. When he did ask me to come up, I had some other obligations, but I just cleared my calendar. He said, "Oh, you get a chance to introduce Dr. Shirley Weber." I said, "Oh, please, I'm on my way." Thanks to Southwest Airlines. It's a frequent flight. When I think about Dr. Weber, the one word that comes to my mouth is courageous. She is the most courageous person I know. I mean, it's easy to be courageous when you got a whole bunch of folks at your back and people put edging you on. But it's another thing to be courageous when you're the only one or you're going against the tide. And she's always been like that. She's was born in Hope, Arkansas. She's the other famous person from Hope. And I think more courageous than that individual. Her father was a sharecropper in Louisiana, decided to move his family to Los Angeles to find a better life. Her family always stressed education, and she listened to her parents very well. She went to UCLA, where she obtained her BA, her master's, and PhD at the tender age of 26, which is absolutely incredible. And even prior to receiving her PhD, she started teaching as a professor at Stanford State University at the age of 23. She also taught at UCLA before coming to San Diego State University. At San Diego State University, she founded the Africana Studies Department because she felt that, just like the other speaker indicated, to learn about your culture, learn about your history. And she started that program and became one of the most dynamic programs at San Diego State University. And one of the things I'm most proud of, she used to take students, I think high school students, to Africa once a year, and not just for tourists. When they went to South Africa or in Africa, she put them to work building, helping underprivileged people in those areas, and to expose students who would never ever have the opportunity to travel abroad to get that international experience. So she was great at that. She was so good, we in San Diego, we elected her to the school board, the San Diego Unified School District School Board, where she served as one of the members there and became the president of the school board. And she was a tireless fighter for education equality and a voice for the voiceless. And after that, she was after serving many years and as a professor, she was ready to kick back and kind of relax. However, she was drafted by people in Sacramento. Said, "Look, you need to run for the assembly." She really didn't have to run. She didn't want. She said, "Okay, I'll do it." And the people, of course, in our community knew who she was. And even those like I don't even live in her district, but I got out and worked on her campaign because I knew she was going to be a very effective assembly person once she got to Sacramento. And she didn't disappoint us. I think California is incredibly grateful to have a woman such as her in the assembly. And we in San Diego, we're sharing her with you guys in the state because she's ours. We can't have her forever.
Thank you for sharing.
All right, I'm telling you. And I think one day there's going to either be a building named after her, or there'll probably be a statue for Dr. Weber, because she is that type of individual. And I'm so proud to call her a friend, And without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the Assemblywoman Shirley Weber from the 79th Assembly District.
Good evening. Good evening. All right. It's good to be here. I seem a little exhausted because I am. We've been in session all day since early this morning. We must have handled 100 and some odd bills today that we had to get off the floor, and we have another set of bills that need to get off tomorrow. So we're in the session now. We're part of the session where we have to get all of our assembly bills out of the assembly, and all the senators have to get the senator bills out of their house. And so this is a very busy time, and I'm it's just fortuitous that I actually am here because we just adjourned right before I came.
Thank you for coming.
And I couldn't disappoint Dr. Oden, but then I heard that my good friend Doug was coming up to introduce me. I thought, what the heck, now I'm having to go for real, I can't have Doug, I can't just say to the locals, hey, I'm sorry, I'm still in session. I have to go because Doug is here, and Doug has come all the way from San Diego, and which I consider to be quite special because he can hear me anytime in San Diego. He was president of NAACP and a great president, and I served under his leadership. And he and my husband, my deceased husband, were very good friends in cable and working with the black lawyers and all the other things. And so he's been a great friend and a great supporter. I've known he and his wife for I don't know how long, and then their daughter. And so they live around the corner from us. So it's been a great relationship to have him as a friend. And so when he told me he had a brother here, I was grateful that he came by my office to meet me right after I became a member of the assembly. So it's been a great experience, and I'm just glad I could be here today to hopefully say a few things and share a few things that I feel very strongly about. I have a unique kind of experience in terms of the things that I do and why I do them. It was interesting today. I have been called a number of things, but the most important thing I've been called in the assembly is what they call the conscience of the assembly. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that. In fact, it was after a presentation that I made for the Dr. King celebration of the Capitol. And one of my colleagues got up and quoted a lot of things I said and called me a conscience of the assembly. And another guy got up and said, Scott, I live for the day when my colleagues will quote me. I said, well, that's not even that important. I said, what is important is that he identifies me as the conscience of the assembly. And I was talking to a Republican colleague today on the floor because of the bills that I'm putting forth. And he said, Dr. Weber, everybody in this building is owned by somebody but you. He said, you're the one person who votes your conscience. And I thought that was kind of amazing. He said, we all talk about it up and down the halls, that you are the only person here who is not owned by somebody. That when you approach me about an issue, I'm looking at the issue and its impact on communities and what's going to happen. And I'm not thinking about what lobbyist is whispering in my ear about what I got to do. Or I'm not afraid that somebody is going to basically organize against me and I won't get elected back to the assembly. I would consider that probably a blessing because then I can enjoy my retirement as I was before I got recruited. So I come to the assembly as a very unique individual. Doug has said I'm courageous, and I tell people every day that I am not courageous. My father was courageous. My father was a sharecropper in Hope, Arkansas. And he didn't just decide to bring his family to California. He got in a fight in August of 1951. He fought because they were trying to cheat him at the weigh station. And he knew what his stuff weighed. And they wanted to cheat him and have him accept less. And he said no. Called him a couple of names and got into a fight. And this was not uncommon because my daddy always stood up for himself. And he never said yes sir, no sir, ever, which is unusual at that time frame for a man to be operating in the 30s and the 40s in the South, and you don't say yes sir, no sir to people. And they thought he was just one of them crazy ants, as they would call him all the time. And his brothers would say yes sir, no sir, just ignore him. But my father never would. And so they had gotten tired of him. And they decided at that point that they were going to kill him. And then his family got together and decided, well, they didn't want him to die because he had 6 children, my mother and kids, and so they decided late at night after the fight at the way station that they would put him in a wagon and take him to Texarkana. And he got on the train to come to California. Now, I say my father was courageous because my father had a 6th grade education. You can only imagine in 1951 riding on a train and you don't read that well. You've never been anywhere but Arkansas in your life. And you're on your way to California to meet your mother, to be with your mother-in-law and her family. My mother's mother was here at the time. And so he came to California. And my older brother talks about how, I was just a baby at the time, but older brother talks about how every night they came looking for my dad, the night riders, looking for him. And my mother, they claimed, I think they didn't know where he was. So so therefore she was taunted as a see, they run off and leave you with all these babies kind of attitude. And then in December of that year, my father had earned enough money, and we all got on the train. Once again, they didn't know where we were going. Late at night, they sneaked us out of town, and all of us came to California. Now, the interesting thing was, despite that, my father was not afraid. And every 4 years, we went back to Arkansas so they could see he was still there. He was still alive. And most of the time there was some confrontation that we would be glad we were only there for 2 weeks because we had to get out of town again. But my father was the courageous one. I mean, he's the one who basically believed very strongly in his own individual strength and his ability to come to California and his ability to actually provide a life for his 8 children. At that time, there were 8 of us eventually. And so I look at him as my courage piece, because what I do may look courageous to those who have wibble-wobble attitudes, but I consider just the work that I'm supposed to do. And hopefully people understand that we are in this world because of the work that we're supposed to do. And I always feel like if I fail to do what I'm supposed to do, then I have made mockery of all of my dad's efforts to educate me, to work, to make sure that I got the best education that California had, to put me in a place that I could actually utilize the knowledge and the skills I had to make change, and to do that without thinking about the consequences of it. Because if you're adequately prepared, as my father told me, you can fight anything you want to fight, you can be anything you want to be, and you can win. So as a result of that, fortunately for me, working at San Diego State University gave me an opportunity to really fight the battles for justice and equality in the Africana Studies Department. I remember my good friend Doug asked me once, how in the world did you ever get tenured? I remember he asked me that question. Because people like me normally don't get tenured. They get killed off by some administrative structure at some point, He said, you speak out, you speak against the president, you tell him what to do, you got this going and that going, and you don't seem to be bothered by the madness that goes on and with the academic senate, and if it's curricular things, you're there fighting for it. If it's students, you're fighting for it. If it's the custodial workers, you're fighting for what is just and right. And so he always went, I said, well, I think it was a mistake. I do, because most people I knew who had somewhat similar attitudes at that particular time did not make tenure. And so people are like, how do you get tenured? And how did this happen? And I think the lesson I learned, and hopefully you'll learn as well as you start talking about justice and equality and how you will achieve those things, it is really the community that gives you the foundation to do the things that you're going to do. And that becomes important. Most of us who are in the academic world separate ourselves from the community that gave us life, that gave us purpose. And I saw that every day when I was a professor at San Diego State and chair of a department and doing all these other things, is that we bring people in and they would begin to isolate themselves from what I consider their power base. And so it became a situation where these folks would be isolated. And once you get isolated, you almost can't do anything radical because you could be cut off and nobody even knew you were ever there. Right. We had professors who had been on, I got a call once from someone I think it was an athletic person, and I got a call from a friend of mine who used to be the basketball coach at San Diego State. And he was telling me about this coach who had gotten in some trouble, and they were trying to get rid of him. And I didn't even know who the person was. He said, Shirley, you don't know him? I said, no, I've been to San Diego State almost 40 years by this time. This guy had been there 25 years. I didn't even know he was there. Okay? I said, I wouldn't know him if he was in a room full of women. I have no idea who this man is. get him an appointment with the president because he couldn't get an appointment with the president. I said, I'm not going to do that. If I get an appointment with the president, it's going to be something more important than you keeping your job. And I don't even know why you need to keep your job, simply because you haven't helped anybody but yourself. And so it was interesting to me as I kept telling people, don't cut yourself off from your foundation. Don't cut yourself off from your foundation. I remember once when I was going up for full professor, everybody in the community knew it. I don't know how they knew it, but they knew it. And they started calling the president. And finally, the president's office called me and said, Shirley, we're not going to deny you. They were telling me, I said, wait a minute, hold up. I didn't tell these people to call you. You need to call them back. Well, could you have them stop calling us? No. You need to call them back and tell them that what you're going to do. And so it's really kind of interesting because your power base that's where it is. And sometimes those of us who get involved in these social justice issues and movements, we forget from whence we've come.
Yeah.
Most recently, most of you have heard about AB 392, which is the bill that talks about the use of lethal force. I had one of the newspaper people say to me during one of the interviews, and they've been very supportive of the bill, says, aren't you afraid you're expending so much political capital on this? And I said, the question is, who gave me the capital in the first place? I haven't forgotten where I got my capital from. And they have more to give. Okay? So I'm not afraid that I'm going to put this out there and fight this battle and we may not win or we're going to win or whatever the deal may be, and that it's going to bruise my reputation. My reputation can only be enhanced by serving the people who gave me the capital.
That's right.
And so he looks at me kind of funny. He goes, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about me. And so it's really kind of interesting because once you understand that, then when you start moving in these places that other people felt you should not move, you gain in terms of your strength and your position. Some people discovered, we did AB 953, which was the racial profiling bill. The first racial profiling bill in the nation that's mandated that police have to report. Those are the kinds of things that we've done that I've been in the assembly because I said I'm not here to make legislation that's no more than a period and a semicolon and a comma. Where you just change a few words around and everybody think you've done something, you really have done very little. Legislation I do makes an impact on what's going to happen. Talks about the issues that need to be raised. And I don't, a few things I do, if someone wants a resolution or something to make them feel better and all that stuff. But I have to address the issues that are important. I tell people I gave up my retirement to come here, okay? Which means it has to matter. Every day it has to count. Otherwise, I'm going to go back and retire. Because I don't have time to just waste on these things. And this is a critical period that needs us. And so as we are fighting this battle, it's interesting because people see me so focused and they say, oh man, what's going to happen with this, that, and the other. And what happened recently, of course, as some of you may know as a newspaper, that law enforcement that was fighting us tooth and nail, commercials all over the state, attacking me as a cop killer, you name it, it was there. Okay? I said my community knows who I am and I'm unafraid. Everybody else was shrinking and trying to figure out how are they going to vote for it, all scared, what have you. Shocked today when they get the main document that comes out that all law enforcement has gone neutral on the bill. Well, it was community people. We have over 150 or 200 organizations supporting this bill. We have the powerhouses of various organizations that are working with us and some labor unions like UDW and CFA and some others that are sponsoring the bill. We have lobbyists who volunteer to lobby individuals because of what we tried to do. And so what has happened is that now it has gone neutral. They've gone neutral, which means there's no reason for people to be afraid to vote for the bill. So now everybody's kind of getting in line to do this bill. It also has now, not only am I the author of it, but it has also some co-authors with the Speaker of the Assembly and the President Pro Tem on this bill.
Alright.
And so we have brought folks along to understand that California, when we get this, it'll be on the floor next week, will have the strongest lethal force bill in the nation because it will be a mandate for the whole state, not just does this, that talks about using lethal force only when it's necessary rather than the reasonable standard. Seattle has it, Stockton has it, some of it, San Francisco has it, some other cities have it, California will have it as its state law.
Yes.
And our officers, whether it's CHP or local officers, or everybody will be trained to the standards, to new standards of when to use lethal force.
Yeah.
And so, so when people ask me about these things, I just say, hey, it ain't about me, it's about what we need to do as a community, bringing together and giving these communities a voice. In this field, there are community organizations that have never really had a voice before, and never had someone who wasn't going to betray them and turn on them and drop the bill because it gets too hot. So I tell people all the time, I said, you know what? And I guess I tell people sometimes I'm probably the most dangerous person in the assembly because I don't really have to be reelected to have a good life. Okay? I had an excellent life before I came here. Looking forward to getting back to it on term limits. You know what I'm saying? People say, what you gonna do next? I said, I'm gonna play with my grandkids. What are you talking about? And so it is really, and that's a good position to be in. And you get to that position when you don't take these positions simply because you get to a certain age. You get to those positions because you practice doing it every day. If you practice being afraid, you'll be afraid. If you practice wibble wobble, you wibble wobble. You cannot maintain your value system unless you practice it every day. Whatever you think about race and gender and equal opportunity and justice has to be in everything you do. It's not something you just pull out the drawer every now and then and sprinkle a little bit on it. It is who you are. And if you can't be that person 24/7, 7 days a week, you're going to be miserable. And I see people who are in the Capitol who are so nervous, they like this all the time, and twitching and witching and carrying on, and they don't know what to do. And some of them asked me, and they said, do you sleep at night? I said, I sleep extremely well. If I can get to bed, I sleep. Okay? Because I have reconciled this world with who I am. And I'm going to be an African American woman who's going to fight for these things that are right, that are just, and that I'm unafraid to fight for. I fight against the teachers union all the time because of the injustices they do to a lot of children. The fight against charter schools is unjust. They need to educate our kids, period, and stop doing these other things that don't make sense. I was one person who stood on the floor yesterday against the legislation that was coming forward that I felt was misguided. Everybody else was afraid. They got up and they talked how bad it was, and then they voted for it anyway. Okay? I did not. I told them straight up, this is the deal. Nothing in this helps children. And we have to keep focusing on that because our kids are failing. California's 47th in funding. It should be first, but we're also 47th in achievement. And there's no correlation between the money and achievement because when we had more money, we still had black and brown kids failing. So when you look at it as a scientist, you say, okay, we looked out there, we had money, kids were failing, we took the money away, they're still failing, we gave them some more money, they're still failing. Obviously there's something more than money that's driving this agenda. And we have to be honest about it because there are children who need us to be a voice. And I tell people all the time, I would not have been who I am. And I say this all the time. I say, I am not the Shirley Weber assemblywoman who's so black, brilliant, and beautiful, and I'm all those things. But I am who I am because somebody kicked down the door and held it open for me to get through. And our responsibility is to kick down the door and let somebody else in. Don't come to this institution and think this is it. I was not the first black, brilliant person anywhere. It's just that some folks kept me and opened those doors and supported me and led me, and a faculty by the name of Lefty Asante gave me his home number, helped me through the university, helped me through graduate school, and that's what I've done to students ever since. That is your responsibility, to pass it on. Not to just take it and gloat in and think you all that in a bag of chips. No, your job is to open that opportunity for someone else. To be that voice, to be those eyes, to give someone else the energy that someone gave to you. And to keep pushing and giving it forward. So let me just simply simply say that as you talk about yourself becoming the voice of a generation of people, basically this Center for Race and Immigration and Social Justice is merely just a name unless you put it into practice. And there's a community out there, and there's a campus here as well, but there's a community out there that's looking for you to provide the guidance. Du Bois talked about the talent of 10. He said there will be a group of people in our community that will be the top people, the university people, the smart people, the people who can think and organize and strategize. But he said it's not just they can organize and strategize for themselves. They are the leaders of the community. They're the ones to be put back into our community, to change our community, to enhance the lives of our people. And if we cannot do that, then it is meaningless. And so I say to you every day that this is who we are, and if we're smart, we'll make sure that we take advantage of all the good things that have been given to us to give to someone else. I always tell folks, I think about the African proverb that talks about when you get to heaven, what's going to happen. He said, when you get to heaven, you see St. Peter at the gate, and you walk up to him, he said he's just going to ask you one question. He's going to say, show me your arms. And he said, if you put your arms out, he'll look at them. He said, if they're real clear, he's going to say, where's your scars? And you'll probably say, why? He says, wasn't there something in life worth fighting for? And hopefully when you get there, you got enough scars that's your badge of courage that says to you, you've been in this battle for a long time. You've had some victories, you've had a few losses, but in the end, you have remained true to your principles and the values of who you are. And you have taken your generation and the people around you a step further than you've been, because that's your job, to change this world and to make sure that it is a better place than the place that you found. Thank you so very much. I appreciate being here.
Let's give Shirley another hand. Shirley, we know you're working overtime, but we know you're working on the people's time. So we really want to thank you for being here, and we want to give you an award. It is our first Building Bridges Award from CRISJ, and we want to honor you for your great courage, your vision, and for being a leader for all of us in our community. So thank you very much. I want to thank you all for being here. And I really want to thank Shirley for her fantastic speech. It was very inspirational. We all know what we got to do now. We got to support this bill. We got to make sure we get this bill passed. There was an editorial in the SAC-B today about the bill. Said to call the governor, call the speaker, call the president pro tem. We ought to call these people, let them know that we want you to support Shirley Weber's bill, support the people's bill to make our streets safer for all of us. So we want you to do that. And I also want to thank my brother for coming up here. And we want to make sure that he knows the way to Sacramento. Doug also sits on a statewide committee on, boy, I should get this thing right, race, identity, and
Profile. This REPA board.
profiling, which has been studying racial profiling here in the state. So he and Shirley have been working together on those issues. So again, we want to thank you all for coming out. I want to thank the artists for bringing your great art here. Beautiful art. Thank you so so much. This is what the community is about. Expression and color and beauty. And so we always want to have art and our music. We have fantastic music here earlier, which was tremendous. Patrice and the voices of our people. So I want to thank you all for coming out, and we got this room for a few more minutes, so let's hang out and have a good time. Okay, so thank you all. Power to the people.
All right, at this time, I'm going to invite our student panel to come on up stage. Khalil, Samir, Gina, and Janet. And I'm also going to ask Professor Christina Victor to come on stage. Professor Victor is an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, and she is going to serve as the moderator for this panel, and will be introducing the panelists and the discussion. So if we could please give a warm welcome to our student panel.
All right.
Thank you everyone for being here tonight. As Chris said, my name is Christina Flores-Victor, and I'm a first-year professor here at Sac State. Similar to what Chris said earlier, I'm also a first-generation student, and I did my undergrad and master's degree here at Sac State. So if it wasn't for actually faculty members in the room encouraging me to go on and get my PhD, I definitely would not be sitting here. So it's the power of good faculty members. I want to introduce our student panelists. We have Samir Kayumi, Janet Esparza-Leso, Khalil Ferguson, and Gina Salinas. I'm going to give you a short bio from each of the students so you can know a little bit about their background before we get into the question for the panel. So Samir, at the end of the table there, Kayumi came to the United States as an infant with his family to escape violence in Afghanistan. During the Soviet invasion, he graduated with his bachelor's in sociology from Sacramento State, and he is currently a student in our master's program in the sociology program here on campus. Janet Esparza, here in the middle, is a student here at Sac State. She is also in the master's in sociology program. She is another Cal State Fullerton graduate, double major in broadcast journalism and political science. She currently works at the Department of Social Service in the Immigration Unit, and her research interests are immigration and mass incarceration. Khalil Ferguson, next to me here, is a native of Richmond, California. Finished his high school at 16 and came to Sac State, He's a double major in international relations and economics. He dedicates his time to the socioeconomic problems affecting Black students on campus, was the president of the National Pan-Hellenic Council, and helped to found the Black Student Union. He currently works in and with the Black population in Oak Park, South Sac, and El Paso Heights, and is looking to earn his PhD in international political economy.
Yeah.
Last but certainly not least is Gina. She is a wife, a mother of 3, and a grandmother of 1. She identifies herself as a Black Latina and second-generation Panamanian immigrant on her maternal side, and an African-American lineage on her paternal side. She has been a member of the CRISJ task force since 2017, and she recently received her master's degree in sociology from Sac State. Her undergraduate degree from UC Davis with a major in sociology and a minor in social and ethnic relations. She focuses her area of studies on gender, race, and class inequality. She's also completed research on the influence of public opinion on immigrants in the U.S., inequality, urban planning, and the juvenile justice system. Gina is an active member in her community, taking part in civic programs, working with local schools to gain grant funding for preschool education programs and led in the development of an academic recognition program for minority youth, created mentoring programs for the female student populations at the middle school and high school levels, and co-chaired school site budgeting committees and oversaw academic tutoring programs at the K through 12 and community college levels. So my question for the students on the panel is kind of a broad question, asking them to reflect on their experiences here at Sac State as a student and kind of forward thinking too for other students who might come into a program here. And the question is, from the student perspective, what is or what do you think can be the role for a task force or a center like CRISJ on campus, given your experiences and experiences of your fellow students that you've seen while you've been here on Sac State? Khalil, do you mind if we start with you?
CRISJ, encompassing race, immigration, and social justice, that is a very broad discourse. A lot of things will go into that, especially, you have different identities and a lot of different cultural backgrounds that make up that. Its importance on campus and how that could affect, at least from my perspective as a black student, would be, like I said, the socioeconomic problems that have, resulted from, I guess what we could say, a lot of our conditions and a lot of our problems have stemmed from colonialism. And just, if we focus on that, that's kind of where a lot of our problems stem from. I think we still focus on today, colonialism plus neo-colonialism and the ramifications of that. So stemming from that and focusing on at least a black student perspective, coming to Sac State, not necessarily my problems. I always say if you were to take a survey of me, I'd be an outlier because a lot of the problems that a lot of my peers face, I haven't faced. I have had a privilege. I've had parents who paid my tuition in full, so I'm coming out of undergrad without debt. So I've had a lot of these problems that a lot of my peers don't have. But even still, the problems that they have result from poverty, which stem from colonialism and the Jim Crow era and the economic ramifications of that. So just starting with that and kind of expanding on that and being that support system, and not only being a support system, but being a kind of a awareness organization to help spread awareness to other groups, to let us know we all have the same kind of initial problems or problems stem from. It's really a result of colonialism, the self-hate that we have in our cultures, the kind of the differences that we have in our cultures, the divergences with different populaces. Even regarding immigration, a lot of the problems that we have right now is the United States claiming immunity to problems that they've started themselves. And we see that outside the border, and we see that within the border, within the black community. They want to say that black people need to lift this up by the bootstraps, but you created poverty and you created slums and you created the ghetto. But yet we're supposed to be the problem solvers to a solution that we didn't have a hand in creating. But from the black student perspective, from my perspective, CRISJ would be instrumental in aiding the other organizations such as BSU, such as MLK Center, such as all these other organizations on campus who are here to help serve marginalized students, because that's what we really are here. We're marginalized communities helping to further our education while holding the backs of our families and our cultures with us as well. So I'll get that started and let the rest of the panelists give their perspectives.
This May, I completed my first year here at Sac State. I did my undergrad at Cal State Fullerton. So I don't know much about the experiences of students here in Sac State, but coming from the Cal State system, I know that when I started Cal State Fullerton, I am an undocumented student. When I started, there was no institutional support for students. A lot of the times it was placed on the student to have to advocate for themselves. It was placed on the student to have to go to the financial aid office and tell the representative there, what is an 8540 student? Why don't you receive financial aid? So that re-traumatizes, that discourages the students from seeking help. It wasn't until my third year of undergrad when the institution created the first undocumented student center in the Cal State system that things changed for me and students like myself. So similarly like that, CRISJ would be a space where students who are not traditional, who the institution wasn't built with them in mind, could have a space to build community, a space where they can build that agency to advocate for themselves, to come out of college with a strong sense of their identity, to know how to stand up for themselves and how to stand up for their communities that they're part of. So I think that it is essential that funding and support is provided to a center like CRISJ, because it definitely it will shape not only the student life, but what happens when the student leaves the institution. I think the point of higher education is to provide students with the tools to be advocates in their community, to be professionals who can give back and to contribute to the economy, but they can only do that if the institutions who are supposed to serve them in an appropriate manner.
To expand on what she's saying and to bring it into the community, there's a couple of different functions of CRISJ. One is to create that safe space for students and to create programs for students to connect, community learning opportunities, possibly mentoring, research opportunities. But the other thing is to connect the community to the institution itself, to bring that into the institution, to create education and opportunity to learn about each other. I think one of the key points of CRISJ is its addressing of intersectionality, of the concept of people of color being a larger group. And when we're talking about people who are brown and black people, we're talking about people of color, and we are expanding on the idea of that. Because for so long we have existed in kind of a binary of race, where it's either white or it's black. And as somebody who has existed on the fringes of that, and who does identify myself as a Black Latina, to honor both the fact that I'm culturally African American, but I'm also culturally a Latina, it is recognizing that people like me exist, recognizing that we have these balances that we have to create for our students so that they have a space where they can learn about each other and that they can create a unity in that experience. Although we may not experience the exact same things because we all have different levels of privilege and we all have different levels of discrimination, but what we are experiencing is discriminations and privileges, and we can find a commonality in that, and we can find a common struggle, and we can find a common purpose in that. And by reaching out to the community organizations of all the different backgrounds, to be able to have the Latin organizations, to be able to have the, Native indigenous peoples, to recognize them, to recognize African American community, to recognize the Asian community, to recognize people who are coming from the Middle East and everything, to recognize all of that, the education that we can share amongst each other creates a unity that is necessary to give that support system that she's talking about to the students, and to not make it a single experience, but honoring all of our experiences and recognizing that we are sharing kind of like a path together. And I think CRISJ is creating a wonderful space to do that, to share in all of these identities, give each one its due, but not create a hierarchy in those identities and not create a hierarchy of discrimination. I'm more discriminated against than you are because I'm in this group, but creating a space where we can look at that and address the issues individually, but still as a group, honoring one another, respecting one another's space. I love that it is an organization that's looking at that in a bigger picture, in a bigger connection way. And as a mother of children who've gone through the system, because I have 2 sons that have already graduated college, and a daughter who's on her way, I want spaces for them to be able to experience their identities where they don't have to choose which identity they want to experience, but then they can experience all of them, and then other people can learn about them as well. And I think CRISJ has been a catalyst to something like that.
What else can I add? Everyone said something that was very amazing. And to kind of piggyback off of what Gina was saying, I feel like that coalition building, that community building, and bringing people together and recognizing our shared experiences and also learning about different experiences helps to make the college campus and also the community more unified. And that's what is needed, especially in these troubled times. So I myself haven't really experienced the CRISJ experience experienced much, but I have learned about it from people that I know that are involved in CRISJ, like Gina and Dr. Barajas. And
okay, I guess we'll expand. I got plenty of time, I guess. I can talk all day about where our conditions stem from. So I'm sure you guys have studied, we've all studied it in depth, at least for our own cultural upbringings and our how we got here. And a lot of them, you know, I love it sometimes because the opposition or the response to us studying and knowing our own history and how we got here is, well, you know, it is what it is. The biggest thing that I've always had the response is, it's funny, okay, I went to a story mode. So a few months ago, it was March, 13 students, 12 students from Sac State and 1 student from Davis were all BSU students after the DA released a decision to not try the officers with Stephon Clark, which shut down Arden Mall. The next day, we were all arrested in the 84 protest. It was 30 BSU students from Sac City, Davis, and Sac State. And we were given history lessons. A few of us were telling the police while we're sitting there detained on the side of the road, like, do you know your history? And they're like, what you mean? Do you know your origin or where you came from? Where the police came from? We're telling about the slave patrol and all that. And, you know, they're like, the first thing out their mouth was, well, did you go through that? And I'm like, that's been the response for like most conservatives. Don't want to, you know, put anyone on the spot. That's usually the response to people who are conservatives, like, well, get over it. Colonization happened. We're here now. Move forward. But it's important to know how we got here if we're here to kind of solve our problems. If you want us to solve our problems, it's important that we know how we got here. We can't just keep repeating the cycle of neocolonialism and colonization if we don't know how we got here and the structures that were put on us to get here. Because it's really important. But when you have that privilege and you're up in that power structure, you don't really care for that. You're like, I'll just get over it. Now we're on the same, ostensibly on the same playing field now that we had the Civil Rights Movement. So it's just funny when I get those responses, even though it's important to us because we know how we're going to change our communities, and we all know that it stems from the same power structure, the same ideological wealth accumulation, GDP growth, and all that neoliberal stuff that keeps us going. I'm just trying to fill in stuff. I don't know where I'm going with this right now.
We know where you're going.
But yeah, if you want to expand on that, you guys have studied it as well. I can speak for the Black perspective. I can, talk on, I actually finished a book. It's called Brazil. It's by a Brazilian author. It was called Brazil Mixture Massacre. And I love it. It makes me want to go to Brazil now because as a Pan-African, someone who identifies as a Pan-African, Brazil has had a strong Pan-African base, but they've been suppressed. And the book focused on one part was called mulattoization through miscegenation. Basically, they wanted to breed and rape Black women to create more white babies and more white class, and eventually they would eradicate the Blacks and suppress Black art or suppress Black ideas and any kind of African descent. And this stemmed from quasi-colonialism from after they gained independence. So it's really interesting. And as a Pan-African, someone who studies Pan-Africanism, the linkage between, we know that 10 million slaves went down to South America and Central America, and only about 300K really came to the United States. So we have a larger population of Blacks in South and Latin America than we do in the United States. So it's really interesting. It makes me want to go. So I'm just trying to fill in right now, and I'm running out of.
So CRISJ is a relatively new organization, task force, soon to be center on campus. So as students who've gone through Sac State or are still going through, if you had a chance to shape what CRISJ is going to look like on campus, and if you had a chance to talk to the faculty members who are members of CRISJ and who want to participate in CRISJ, what would you tell them that you need from this organization in terms of support and mentorship, in terms of reaching out if you want to do work in the community, or in terms of service work, or going to graduate school? What are the types of things that the faculty who participate in CRISJ can give to you if you as a student want to participate in CRISJ? What can the relationship look like, or what would have helped you while you were here? What things can we provide to you as educators if you're going to take part in this organization that we're also a part of?
So as a student, one thing that we can take out of it is, I think that many Cal States are commuter schools, and a lot of the students have many roles. Some are parents, others have transportation issues, rely on public transportation. So coming to school is sometimes their first challenge, right? And I think it's a disservice to create a space where you're create a space for students where they're just going to class and then they're going home. Because then they're going to graduate and the job market wants work experience, wants volunteer experience, wants this well-rounded student that sometimes it's unrealistic, specifically for our students of color or minority students. So if CRISJ could create internships, create opportunities to collaborate with professors, to do research similar to like McNair is federally funded, so an undocumented student like myself could have never participated in McNair, although it's a marvelous program that really creates that pipelines for students who are interested in going into graduate school, students that are interested in going to maybe a business school or law school. If CRISJ could create a space for students to really give them the tools to be successful professionals, that would be amazing. Also, I mentioned institutional support. I think it's very unfair to have a few faculty that students seek, and they do it out of the goodness of their heart because they love their students and they want to see them succeed, but sometimes like we burn them out. We as students, we're always going to that same faculty, and you know, we are not allowing them to also, they have their professional ambitions, they want to grow in different directions, but they also want to serve their students, so sometimes they feel caught between that. So if CRISJ is able to alleviate that by creating an institutional base for students or a network for students where they not only have one advocate, one professor, but 15 or 20, that would be really amazing.
Considering that tonight is about building bridges, she just basically described the building of a bridge, I'm going to expand on that and say, again, I always use my own experiences in life because we have a tendency to experience stuff personally and then project that out. You know, we always know about the personal and the public. I think what would be great for CRISJ in the future would be to not just create programs here for students and mentoring and stuff here, but it would be great for us to somehow start reaching back into our communities through that K through 12. Really already start getting children geared towards that next level of education, that next level of opportunity, to really kind of start reaching into our community through maybe community outreach to connect back to that level of student. The students who maybe are in underserved communities, who for them going to college is an idea or a concept, but it's not something that's tangible, that's reachable, that's real. It's just something out there in the universe. To be able to kind of connect back to those communities and maybe give an opportunity for students here who have crossed over or crossed that bridge into higher education to go back into their communities and cross some other children over into that. Kids that reflect who they are, that they can go back into the community, maybe through programs created by CRISJ, where the students can themselves be mentored and be mentors to get the next generation that's coming up, to give them identity, to give them a reality. You know, a young brother like this being in front of kids in these schools could be the difference between a kid going somewhere or not, because he'll be able to see himself and say, this is a reality that I didn't contemplate. This is something that could actually happen in my life, and have that person to talk to that's a little closer to where they are and not as far away as maybe some of us are. Because it's easy to go back in as a mentor, even with me where I've worked with kids, but there's a different connection you have with somebody who's in the group right above you that can really reflect and connect to your experience and can give you that bridge and say, you know what, I know what it looks like because I'm in the middle of crossing it, or I just crossed it myself. So I can get you over too. So if CRISJ can act as that bridge to the community through the community service and really reach back into that youth, giving students not just the opportunity for those students, but it would give the students within a CRISJ program the opportunity to get experience working with youth. You know, give experience presenting in front of groups, give them experience that they can then use as their own professional experience and can fill out a resume saying, I know how to do all of this because I've done it through the program. So I think for me that's a win-win. The young people coming up win and the people in the program win. And ultimately we all win because as we're bringing up all of these students and all of this education and all of this experience, we're creating a different environment and we're creating a different dialogue because everybody now can speak the language together.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to see a lot of what you guys all said, but also expanding on what Janice said, this is a commuter school. Like myself, many of the other students have full-time jobs as well as being students, so they don't have the ability to connect and link up with other organizations to gain experience and learn about other avenues of
I'm just going to piggyback a little bit on what he was saying and going towards is it would also be good if in the future, and this is when you start really thinking, you know, if I could have anything, let me just start picking from the clouds and take the stuff that I want. It would be wonderful to see an organization like this grow to where maybe there's even satellite areas that they can exist in, where they can exist within a community. So maybe those students who do commute to school and can only make it to school for certain hours, that we can create programs within their community where they can still serve as a student within the community they exist in. So I represent Sacramento. I'm a Sacramento, you know, CSUS student, but I can be in Meadowview. I can be working there on a project given to me through CRISJ. It creates the bridge to the community, and within the community, I can still stay there and work in the community. I don't have to commute to another spot where I'd have to be. I can bring my advocacy to where I exist. And that would give a lot of opportunity for students who really do have where, look, I can basically get there on the bus and I have to get home, but if something was right here in my local community center, my local school, that I could take part in, I would still be able to get the opportunity and the experience, but not have to commute all the way back to school to do it. So just, you know, if you're reaching for the stars, you might as well grab a few of them and really say all the things that would be wonderful, because you never know what day that's actually going to be about and can come to fruition as an opportunity for our students.
And it was touched on quick, but I want to focus on, you know, she said internships, but specifically paid internships, if we can. Throughout my undergrad career, I worked 32 hours every single semester. And I know a lot of my friends who tried that, and that some of that money went back home to Richmond. So on top of the burden of being a first-generation college student, which most of us are from coming out of poverty, the financial stress comes with that, which takes away from opportunities such as unpaid internships, which provide experience to help us get to that graduate level or give back to our communities. Even though as much as we want to, we still have to pay bills while this is a commuter campus. Most of us do go to class, go home, and go to work while trying to maintain our studies. So it is a larger load with regards to being a first-generation college student. So if we can take away from, you know, the public sector, I guess, the private sector for working these jobs and give back to our community while getting paid for it, and everyone wins, right? So yeah, like, you know, kind of model after. So a few things that we focused on. It's funny, you mentioned we're bridging gaps. We're focusing on increasing the professors that you said that, you know, students want to go to while taking away from their workload, and then we mentioned focusing on bridging gaps in the community, and that's something that we just really BSU actually just presented to the campus with regards to increasing the number of black professors we have while doing a cohort program and reaching into the community, kind of like the camp program does, getting them while they're in high school and things of that nature to get them acclimated before they even enter college to kind of get to that. So it's funny we have the models in place to do that. So if CRISJ could be another organization that assists with that, then we have a plethora of these organizations who are going out into the community, focusing on marginalized students, marginalized individuals, and helping them get into campus while being that kind of model for them to succeed in the campus. Because at the end of the day, we want to get them into campus and get them out. And through the CSU system, we have a problem with marginalized student retention, whether you be black, brown, yellow, or green. Regardless of how you are, if you're marginalized, that retention rate is going to be a lot longer than a student who has a little bit more opportunities and can afford to do. So let's say do that, unpaid internship. So things of that nature, we have the models and we can take after them and we can reach out to the community while giving back and get our students in and out of college because we don't want them to accumulate debt. That's the biggest problem for millennials and Generation Z as well. So.
I just wanted to say a big thank you to our student panelists. I think what they had to say was excellent about their experiences and why CRISJ is necessary for the community on campus and possibly where we might go from here as we start to build this program and build this center. I think it's obvious that students are really eager for this contact with faculty, and whether it's in terms of being exposed to research or internships or other professionalization service in the community, hopefully paid, and engagement in other ways here on campus. And I think CRISJ can play this role. And I think it's important, students could gain a lot from it, but I think it's important to also point out that we as faculty gain a lot from the contact with students too. So there's a huge benefit to the faculty knowing what students need, what's going on in their lives, how we can better support them here on campus. So it's not just the students that would benefit from CRISJ being here and CRISJ growing on campus, but we benefit a lot too. And I want to say thank you because the students are all here after finals participating. So thank you very much, panelists.
All right.